Welcome to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I'm Peter Hostros. I got a great guest today. Ryan Rector is here. Ryan, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Absolutely. Good to be here. Thank you.
All right. So there's a lot of titles under your LinkedIn. And I think today we're going to focus on one of them. But I want to give you an opportunity to tell everybody who Ryan Rector is and what are the things that you do.
Yeah, thank you. I do have a lot of titles, and all of them are passions for me, but they all really play together nicely. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But I grew up in a small town in farmland, Ohio. I had a large family, extended family. All my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, they were all farmers and blue collar workers. And my dad was one of the white herrings, I guess, of the group. And he was a teacher and a guidance counselor and a varsity basketball coach in our small town. So I kind of had that experience and perspective my whole life. And all I knew at that time when I was in high school and trying to start to think about this stuff was I don't want to do any of that, including education. I saw my dad, as I was growing up in it, and it was just a very clear thing. And my education experience, especially in high school, I was one of those kids in class that I always was asking the teacher, why do we have to learn this? Why are we learning this? And I wasn't asking in the sense of I wasn't that kid that was trying to be a smart aleck. I was genuinely like wanting to know why I had to know it, because I'm just one of those people. I need to connect the dots on, okay, how am I going to use this? What do I need this for? How do I'm going to apply it? Because I'm just a very practical person, and that's just who I was. And I never got myself in trouble with those questions, but I don't think my teachers necessarily appreciated the ask at the time. But I kind of had that experience, and same in college. I chose to go into business in college, or accounting really. And about a year and a half in, all I knew through that experience and through an internship was, what, I definitely don't want to be an accountant. And I just had this firm belief. Despite going into college, I'm like, I really want to be an accountant. I want to do this, and I was excited about it. And I get into it, and I'm just like so disappointed. And I go to my academic counselor, my advisor, and said, hey, I think I want to change my major to something else. And he said, well, you can do that, but you're going to have to go an extra year, and you're going to have to, spend the time, extra money to do this. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, well, you're going to have to stick with accounting then, and you can, if you just want to do something in business, you can figure it out. And he was right. I ended up getting into corporate finance, primarily in banking. I was at a large bank for a little over 9 years and had a great corporate career. And this is where my life kind of started to change. It was around 2009. I was moved out to Southern California. I started getting exposed to entrepreneurs that I'd never really seen or experienced before. They were high-tech entrepreneurs, and just started talking to them, meeting with them, and I was just inspired. And at the time, I was going through something where I was in my, I think, 6th job in 9 years at Chase, just constantly being promoted, and had this great career, and was making great money, more than I really needed or had set out to do. And I wasn't happy, and I couldn't figure out why. And I was actually upset that I wasn't happy, because I felt really blessed and knew I was blessed beyond measure in where I was at, and had a great life, but I just wasn't fulfilled or happy in what I was doing. And I met these entrepreneurs, and I was just sparked to do something different. And I started investing in them personally. And in 2011, I felt led to leave the bank, and I became an entrepreneur. And I became this double whammy entrepreneur, where I was an entrepreneur that was investing in entrepreneurs and trying to help them. And that was an experience where it was just super humbling. I came up, I was largely successful in school, as much as at least I wanted to be. And I was successful in my corporate career. I never really failed at anything. And I had this wiring that I had this Superman complex that, you know what, I'm gonna be awesome at this. I'm gonna get in here. I'm gonna help these entrepreneurs, and you know, we're gonna make waves, and you know, the it's a moonshot. And uh, well, I can say I was doing that for 5 years, and it went well for a little bit, but then over 5 years, it was just this slow burn, like fall back to earth, and it just failure after failure after failure. And it hit about 2015, and I was just done. I was like, I don't know what happened. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how I got to this point where I feel this way. And I knew this is my calling. I knew this is what I was meant to be. I was meant to be an entrepreneur. I was meant to be an investor and help entrepreneurs grow their companies. I felt it in my bones, but I had just failed, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I was at this inflection point in 2015, and getting to the original point of how did I get into education. That's how I got interested in education. And I was actually doing a postmortem. So I left my company. I was in this period over about 3 months. I was trying to figure out what was next. I was on this just coffee tour. I met with probably, I don't know, over 100 people over the course of 3 months, just connecting with people, just trying to figure it out. And around that same time, as I was kind of just thinking, what happened? How did I get here? I really looked back on my education, and I was just like, man, I think that had a really negative impact on how I got here. Not in necessarily the knowledge or the lack of knowledge, or you know, the skills that were imparted or not imparted, but just this mindset. And it was this mindset that I just look back and I'm like, man, I had to unlearn everything. Like I literally had to deprogram myself over the last 5 years. And by the time I got to this point where I finally got it and felt competent, it was too late. And so I literally, I just got really jaded. I remember I was journaling, I was writing down all these thoughts that were just coming out. And I was just destroying education on paper. And I never said anything. I never published it. It was just my reflection. And right around that time, I had this interesting opportunity where I was on the board of my church, and we were growing really quickly. We were looking at this property. We're going to be gifted this large property that we could grow into. And the current owners of it, they were kind of going out and they said, hey, look, we've got this private school here, and the only caveat that you know we give this property to is like a $4 million property. It was like this amazing opportunity that we didn't think we were going to get an opportunity like it. And they said, you just have to keep the school open. And we're looking around the room, and none of us in that boardroom, and none of us really like super close to this thing. We're educators, and you know, here I'm sitting there across the room. I had just written this private manifesto about education. I'm like, no, we're not doing this. And I softened up a little bit, and one of my fellow board members, his wife, was a superintendent of a really prominent a public school system in our area. It was one of the top schools in our state, and we asked her to come in and said, hey, can you take a look at this? And we don't know what to look at. We don't know what we're doing. Can you just tell us? And so she came in and said, yeah, you know, honestly, I wouldn't, as an educator, I wouldn't touch the school with a 1,000-foot pole. And I'm like, see, we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do this. And, you know, it was this interesting dynamic. We were looking at the school, and it was a private school. It was about 40% suburban middle-class kids, about 60% kids in poverty. And it was this cultural clash, and it was just a really sad dynamic. and you just felt it walking into the school. And about probably a couple of weeks later, April came back to me and said, "Hey, I got a thought." And Dr. April Domini, and she said, "Hey, I've got this thought. I've been really thinking about this, and I didn't say this, but I've had this dream of starting a network of innovation schools, and I think I can turn the school around with this model, leveraging design thinking and inquiry-based learning." And at the time, as an entrepreneur, I knew design thinking and I understood what she was saying there, but I knew nothing about inquiry project-based learning. And so she started educating me, and I just, I just started leaning in. And I'm like, "Tell me more about this. Like, where was this when I was in school?" And I started telling her everything I just told you. And that was just another spark. And that was a turning point in my life. She introduced me to some authors, Ted Dintersmith and Tony Wagner, and some of the work that Sir Ken Robinson was doing in that space. And that was the day, or I guess a couple weeks that just really changed my life. And at that point, I knew for my kids and for the future, everything I was seeing as an entrepreneur, everything I was seeing in these corporate clients that I was talking to at the time that were trying to figure out how to be more innovative, and they were talking to me as an entrepreneur that had been in corporate. How do we solve these problems? All of these things just started coming together at the same time. And I'm like, this is something we have to figure out. We have to do, we have to get out there. And it just became my life mission.
That's, and we've had previous conversations when I was opened up to design thinking as an educator. It was mind blowing. PBL and project based learning and understanding that. Now I teach in a high school, and we've talked a lot about that mindset change. It's very difficult to change as a teen. You already had like 10 years or so through. And as a matter of fact, I teach entrepreneurship in high school, and the first thing, like when you were out in California, you were learning the mindset, right? It's very cool, and thank you for sharing that complete 360 look, because you're right. The fulfilling parts of your life are coming together with this school, and these challenges, they're not easy, right? But they're fulfilling, and that's great in its own right to see. I encourage all my listeners and parents to understand that their kids have all these things, but once you get it fitting together and gelling, it gets amazing. So talk a little bit about how now, you're into the school, and you had this private manifesto, and I'm sure there was, I would love to read that, by the way, off topic. I'm sure like a lot of the things, there's probably some choice words and whatever in there, but as what were some of the main pieces? You don't have to reveal exactly what you were saying there, but the top 3 things that you wanted to change right away while you're building the school out.
I mentioned my dad was a teacher, but I had so many people around me that are educators, at that time and really throughout my adult life. Several of my closest friends are educators, teachers and administrators. My wife's a teacher. I have so many close people that are teachers, and throughout this entire time, I'm also hearing from them about what's going on in education and politics and all of these different things. So that was a part of it as well that was just rolling around in my head. And it was my personal experience. It was their contributions that really led to that mindset. And as we dove into the school, and this is 2016 when we officially took it over, and that was our first full year in, and we had really set out. And I'm just going in. I'm passionate about it, and I'm volunteering my time to help April. Because it was a very low budget situation, and there just wasn't she didn't have the budget to hire a business person to help, financially and just from an operations and staffing standpoint to turn that around from that side. So I was diving in, and I'm getting into this for the first time. But we sat down and we talked, and we had other people and the staff and some great administrators that she brought in, and we really just talked about how we just want to give kids an opportunity to discover within themselves what their passions are, what their interests are, what they're good at, and that there isn't a test that exists that we could find that helps a kid do that or measures what that growth is. It's something that's really intangible, and that was hard for me in the sense that I'm a venture capitalist, and I at that time I was already getting back into another venture capital firm, and I was all still working with entrepreneurs, and I want measurables, so I get why there's tests there. I get viscerally why there needs to be measurables and things like that. I get performance, and I understand the background. But when I really dove in, and we dove in as a team trying to look at this, we really wanted to create an environment where there was every opportunity for kids to explore, and this is K through 12, to explore that within themselves and learn through their things that they're interested in and passionate about. And we didn't want to have coined curriculum or prefabbed scenarios or projects that we just came in with. We wanted them to create them. And so it was really just, we didn't know what we didn't know, and we were trying. And obviously there's all this research, and there were some schools that were out there doing it holistically as a model, but there's very few at the time, especially at the time. There was very few schools that said we are going all in on this as our model. We're getting rid of all textbooks. We're getting rid of tests. We're getting largely rid of lecturing and all of those key components. And we had to train a teacher staff, over the course of 3 months between school years. And, a lot of them were new teachers coming in that were just passionate. Like, I want to teach in this. I believe this is the way we need to teach kids, but I don't know how to do it. Largely, they had some experience in it and implementing it in their classrooms. So I don't know if this is answering your question, but it was just this process where we said, here's what we want, here's what we envision. We have to figure out a lot of things to and really take this, innovate. We literally had to live what we were teaching from a design thinking standpoint. You go through that cycle, that ideation cycle, and you put it in motion. You put the prototype out there, and not that we were being, the kids were being guinea pigs, but they on a holistic level. But we were very transparent, and hey, we are figuring this out. Here's the process. We were modeling it to the students as we were going along, and I think that transparency really opened them up, because it's hard, especially as you mentioned for the high schoolers, and that, look, I'm used to learning this way. I'm used to being held accountable to these things. I'm just trying to go to college here. Like, I don't know if this is a good fit. And, frankly, for some of them, especially that were juniors and seniors, it was tough, and we understood it. We worked with them. Our teachers were great in working with them to try to help them really, really push through, and provided them some more traditional opportunities, on an individualized basis to make sure that they were getting what they needed. But it's not an easy proposition. And I think if we were to do it over again, and we are, and we're doing it, especially for that older age group, 9 through 12, we take a little bit more drip approach in providing internship opportunities and things like that are more palatable, in addition to some of the work they're already doing.
It's so interesting because as an educator, we're 20 years. It's funny, we do share a very similar story growing up. I grew up in a small town. My father was an educator and a football coach. So I did see all the things that he did in the classroom. He's like, well, he would talk about this individual. I was like, okay, this part of math he's not going to use right now, so let's just focus on the stuff, so all those bits and pieces, and then you're actually modeling this entire with the design thinking process with the students, which they're not used to. Talk about some of the successes. Like, there are failures. If I could do it again, like you mentioned there, those are opportunities, really, I think, as entrepreneurial mindsets go. What are some of the interesting things that these youth are like creating in their projects, and because they're leading, we're getting out of their way, and just facilitating learning. So share some of those.
It's been nothing but pure joy for me to see this in action. And we're in our 6th school year right now, with our lab school. It's called One School, based out of Gahanna, Ohio, which is a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the demographic makeup of the school is very blended. You have, again, still, I think it's closer to 50-50 at this point. Your suburban middle class kids and kids that come from economically disadvantaged homes. And it went from being really just this culture clash into, it took a couple of years, but that empathy component of design thinking is what really, when we really practiced it on a day-in-day basis, and we taught them what that truly meant. And I think sometimes society gets it wrong on what empathy really means. And, true empathy is putting yourself in someone else's place, getting rid of all of your biases on what they might, who they might be and what their experiences are, and just listening them and putting yourself truly in their shoes. And so this was a great opportunity for kids that had very different life experiences to learn from each other in this very safe place and area. And it took some time to break through that. But now that we're year 5 and year 6 into it, just going to the student exhibitions that they do when they present their projects to the community and parents and teachers and some of the organizations that they've partnered with and that we're mentoring them throughout this. Just one story stands out in particular. I believe they were 2nd and 3rd graders. The teacher allowed them to truly just choose whatever projects they wanted to work on at the beginning of the year. And obviously they got some warm-ups and things like that. But when they really dove in, the group of kids in this, I believe it was 2nd and 3rd grade, they sat down and they broke into several groups. And one group of 2nd, 3rd graders decided, several of their family members were incarcerated. And so they talked about how that experience of going and visiting their incarcerated family member was so challenging and heartbreaking for them. And so they decided, how do we create this better experience? And so that was their design challenge. And the teacher helped them throughout the course of a semester, solve that problem. And then another group in the same class, they were really interested and passionate about shelter dogs and getting shelter dogs adopted. And they had this project that they were working on. And then the teacher in the middle of it at some point said, "Hey, I really think it's interesting what both your groups are working on. Why don't you work together and combine your solutions?" And so what they ended up exhibiting was this combined solution where they had dogs from the shelter that were trained, that they were able to train to be I forget what the calming dogs, or I forget exactly what you call them, the calming dogs, and they trained the dogs in this model to go with kids to the prison. And they were there to be companions with the kid as they were visiting a parent or their family member, whomever it was. And it just created this additional dynamic where it's a good experience for the person that's incarcerated and the child and their family members. And just hearing them present on this and how passionate, and there were almost tears in their eyes just thinking about, I was able to solve this problem that's very meaningful to me. And you go through that, and this was last school year, and then the only test that our kids take all year long is the state tests here in Ohio at every grade level. And we have seen extraordinary results from that. And we've been consistently over 90% pass rate at grade levels across the board. And they're learning, they are truly learning through all that they need to know, all of that, all of those standards that they need to know by doing things that they're truly passionate about. And to hear them talk about it, and seeing eighth graders now that were second and third graders when we first went in and took over the school, and they wouldn't look you in the eye and be able to answer just basic questions like how are you doing, how's your day? And now they're presenting, in front of community members, in front of business people, in their communities with confidence, and they're speaking like adults that, I'm like, I want to hire you right now. I like their thought process and how they think about things. I'm like, I really want to hire you because I can train you to do anything when you have that mindset. Yeah. And so that's a long-winded answer to your question. Yeah. But that's where we're seeing the success, and that's why that's at least why I'm so passionate about it, is because I see the need not only with entrepreneurs and needing to have this mindset and these skills of solving problems developed while learning all the math and science and applications and social studies applications that they need to know. They're learning all that, but they're able to apply it in real life problem solving. Yeah. And this is what our workforce needs. If you talk to corporations of all sizes and they talk about gaps and skill sets in their workforce, these are some of the soft skills that they're talking about needing. They're like, corporations are starting to stop looking at resumes because they're getting bad results of looking at resumes. And you can have all these great little check marks on your resumes that look great, but then you come in and they're not what the companies are looking for, mostly from a mindset and those soft skill standpoints.
Yeah, it's interesting. You did mention Sir Ken Robinson, and obviously, the creative schools and a lot of his work as well. And I'm going to go back to when I was exposed to design thinking. It was actually it wasn't lectured to me. Our students actually did it we did a trip, and to see that happen, where it's a 180, right? Like we are. I bet if you go back to that, I keep going back to your book that you'll never publish on education. But like when you see that, it's literally locking kids in boxes and checking those boxes, taking away their confidence, not giving them voice. This is where we're having the equity problems, and I feel that this is an answer. Because you see, when you get out of the way of students, they do become creative problem solvers. Yes. They do, they are passionate about things. They're not lazy. I mean, they're great youth. That's amazing. So my last question is, where do you go from here? Where does the school go from here, and what does it look like in the next X amount of years?
Yeah, so the school, we are looking at expanding. The school is it's a private non-for-profit. It has its own board. I've actually stepped away from that because I have co-founded an education company with Dr. April Domini, who started the school, and we are really working to take all of those lessons that are learned, and her entire career of lessons. She was applying this at the public school systems that she was involved with at the scale that they would allow, at the time. So she has all this experience, and I'm taking all of my experience from an entrepreneur and venture capital standpoint, working with her and her team, her education team, and we're just really trying to work together to figure out, okay, how do we make these connections between what we do in a full day school environment, at one school, and take those into a scalable, applicable way that, we realize that we are not going to be able to disrupt education, on a holistic, approach, like that. we're under no delusion that that's possible. So we're taking the approach, what can we do? How can we help teachers? How can we provide really simple, easy to implement tools and training and technology to help implement this, and very palatable things like corporate facilitated internships. That's kind of our ground, where we have these great relationships with corporations and startups from around the country and globe, and they're very interested in helping kids go on this journey. They just don't know how to do it, and we have these experiences and this platform that we've been building. So that's really what we're trying to work on right now, and we have some people in education that are approaching us and helping them, even on the higher education level, where they're interested, how do we apply this at this higher education level? They see kind of the future is here and it's coming, and that they have to adjust. And it's going to be something where I think with credentialing and certificates and things like that, students are going to really find a lot of opportunities where that traditional 4-year degree isn't necessarily a step that you have to take in every single career path. And I'm hoping that, from my standpoint, I can help inspire students, and really, I want to inspire parents to, I'm 41 years old. I have 2 kids that are 8 and 11, and I want to inspire my kids, but I want to inspire other parents that are just like me, that had a very traditional education experience. And, we were able to get jobs because we went through that education experience very traditionally, but the world has changed around us. And, it's not just me. It's not just me as an entrepreneur that is just this crazy visionary that is, experiencing what I'm experiencing. Our kids going to all sorts of career paths are experiencing this right now. And a lot of these student debt problems, and getting into the workforce and realizing, gosh, I just went to school for 4 years, and I don't actually like this. What do I do now? We can really help our kids, make adjustments, realize that there's not just one pathway anymore that's acceptable. And I know it's going to be hard. I know it's hard for us to we've had this long-standing societal thing where you got to go to college. And so I'm hoping to inspire parents that, I've seen a lot of really successful people, and I'm hearing from a lot of corporations that are saying, nope, we don't need that per se. Obviously, you're always going to have doctors and people like that need to go that route, but we can provide other paths for our kids.
Yeah, I'm a parent as well, and we had previous conversations on that. Do we really want our kids doing the same thing that we did, and even our grandparents did, or our parents? And yeah, that is superb, to get parents to really just think about their own educations beyond a test score, beyond a grade, and then what is it, and then how can you replicate that? It's wonderful stuff you're doing, yeah. Ryan. I want to give you a chance to give some contact information. How can people connect with you? We have a lot of parents, we have a lot of administrators, people in education, obviously listening to the podcast. If they wanted to reach out and maybe create a conversation or continue this conversation, how would they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. My email is very simple. It's ryan@loud.vc, LOUD.vc, as in venture capital. You can obviously, put that up as you want. That is the easiest way to reach me. I am very interested in talking to anyone. Most of my week these days, even in my day job at Loud Capital as a venture capitalist, I'm responsible for our education division. My partners, I've talked so much to them, like I have to you and your listeners today on a day-to-day basis, that they're all passionate about it too, and they're fully on board. And we've really committed as an organization from an equity and diversity and future, forward-looking, promise that we are going to be a part of the solution as an organization. So I do a lot of my stuff under that.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, talking about your path. We all have some more to learn. We all have some more design thinking routes to go through. But we appreciate you chatting with me and our listeners. Thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity, Peter. Thank you so much.
And thank you all for listening. Until next time, we'll talk to you on Disrupt Education.